Okay, welcome back. I'm Andy Molinsky, and welcome to the Get Out of Your Comfort Zone interview series, where we engage thought leaders about the challenges they have stepping outside their comfort zone in their lives and advice that they might have for the rest of us. And today I have a very special guest. We have Kristi Faulkner, who is president and co-founder of Womenkind, where she advises clients who need and want to better reach, engage, and motivate women through enhanced marketing messages, product innovation, and organizational evolution. And she is currently writing a book about women as a competitive edge in business. Kristi, thank you so much for being with me today.
Happy, Andy.
Well, I am very happy to have you here, and as you know, the focus of this video series is on comfort zones and on, most specifically, acting outside your comfort zone. So could you share with me and with us maybe a situation or a time where you have or currently are, however you want to take it, had to stretch outside your comfort zone, what it was like, what the challenges have been, and maybe ultimately how you've worked on overcoming those challenges?
So first of all, I feel like I'm talking to NASA, Space Command. That headset on.
I know.
In my comfort zone now. So,
Is that outside? Is that outside your comfort zone? Are we?
Oh no.
No?
I love astronauts. So.
Oh, okay.
So I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of comfort zone because I find myself. I feel like I'm out of my comfort zone a lot. And when I think about what my comfort zone is, when you first asked me this question, I'm thinking, I'm not even sure how I would define my comfort zone because it seems to evolve. I become comfortable with something and then I become uncomfortable with something else. Early in my career, so I'm a creative director and I'm basically it's an ad agency essentially in New York. And when I started out my career in New York, I was just a young scrub copywriter who didn't know much, and I was from Texas and fresh in New York, and that was way out of my comfort zone to begin with. But I was a creative person, and as a creative person, you sit at your typewriter / computer word processor in those days, and you write, and then you go into a meeting and you present your ideas, and of course your ideas get ripped to shreds, and no one likes them, and here's how they could be better, and what were you thinking? So that, not taking that personally, is a very important learning curve that I had to do early in my career. So I had to learn to detach from my ideas and go into a room and present ideas. And I learned very quickly to not take it personally. I had to learn to be collaborative and be somewhat agreeable. So when someone says, I don't like it, then you say, well, how can we work on it? And what can I do to improve it? So you learn to detach. And that's a way to step out of your comfort zone. So I'm there about my ideas, and you have to learn not to defend them because it's obviously very uncomfortable when your ideas are being shredded. And you have to learn to accept criticism without taking it personally. So my ideas become a product or a creation that is separate from me. And that's the way that I dealt with that very early in my career. But it's deeply personal. Your ideas come out of your head. There's something that you're sitting alone at your typewriter coming up with them. So they're babies. I think it was Hemingway who said, "Kill the babies." And he was talking about the ideas. Your most precious ideas, you kill them, and that's what happens in advertising. They get killed. So fast forward 20 years, and now I have my own company, and I'm starting my own agency. And I've learned throughout time to when people shred your ideas, you just say, okay, we have more ideas. There are more of those come from. Don't like this one? Here's 100 more. And you learn to be prolific and just keep going. And here's another one, and here's another one. Don't like that one? Here's another one. And that is something different from you. But when I started Womenkind, I was very comfortable with selling ideas, but all of a sudden I had to sell myself and my company. And it was the inverse of what I had learned. I can no longer be detached. I can no longer say, Okay, if you don't like that, we have more. There is no more. There's womankind. There's us. There's, me as part of this team, co-founding the agency, and the people who work for us on the team. It's now us I'm trying to sell. As a president of the company, it's my job to sell us. So all of a sudden, it's not just about the ideas. It's about me and the team who creates the ideas. And it is personal. It's personal all over again. And I'm uncomfortable all over again. And it was enormously difficult for me to pivot and readjust and think more personally about how to sell myself. And when I say myself, I mean my company, my team, the whole thing, not just me personally. But it was very deeply personal because all of a sudden I'm pitching the agency, pitching myself, so to speak, and I took it deeply personal. They don't like my ideas, fine, but they don't like me. What does that say about me and my ability to create and my ability to lead a team and run a company? Enormously difficult. So what did I do? It's still very hard. It's still very much a struggle, I have to say, because I'm capable of, I'm idea euphoric, and I'm capable of generating hundreds and hundreds of ideas endlessly, but I only have one me, and I can't make a lot of changes to me. So what I tried to do to prevent myself from, there's imposter syndrome, and I know your work talks about that a lot, and I know that that's very much a reality for a lot of people in my situation and in business across the board. But that feeling of, should I be doing this? And am I capable of doing this? And what makes me think I can do this? So I really had to confront that and get comfortable with the idea of, yes, I am good enough to sell myself and to sell my company. And, it's very different. It's very difficult. And I still challenge, I'm still challenged by that. But I think it's just about being very honest with myself about my skills and my creativity and my team's ability to solve problems for a client, being authentic about what we can do and what we can't do, not overpromising, being open and understanding that I'm selling myself, but at the end of the day, myself is a product. So learning to know when to detach from the product and not take it personally, and when actually sometimes it is my fault that maybe they don't like me and they don't like my ideas and they don't like the way our team functions and operates. It's very, very challenging and ongoing.
That's really interesting. I think a lot of people struggle with this idea, multiple aspects of what you talked about selling themselves. I think that's a big one. About feeling like an imposter, maybe, and then also dealing with criticism. I think you hit like the triple whammy there. Say a bit more about. I sort of feel that in your answer, there's a bit of a very interesting dynamic between detaching and connecting. Right? At times in your answer, you talked about detaching as maybe a way to protect yourself, but then in your current role as the face and embodiment of the company, in some ways, you can't really detach fully. You have to really engage. You have to actually create a connection, a relationship. So say a bit about that. It seems like a tension.
Yeah. So it goes back to the foundations that I learned early in my career, is that you have to, even though the product that we create is cerebral and it comes from our heart and sometimes it's deeply emotional, you have to learn to let go of it and set it out into the world, and it becomes its own thing. Ideas, I read this once, I don't remember who said it, but it may have been Picasso, but once you create something, you give it to the world and it's no longer yours. So not to be too precious about advertising campaigns or market strategy, but when you create it, it goes out into the world, and then people can do with it what they want. And I've seen this. I've worked with some authors, and I'm working on a book myself, and even entrepreneurs who create a product, and it becomes very precious to them, and it's an extension of them. And you really do have to cut the cord, and you really do have to accept that you're going to write a book. It's going to go out to the world. 100,000 people are going to love it. 20,000 people are going to hate it. And who are you going to listen to? The 20,000 or what have you. But you have to disconnect. So that's the detachment part. The connective part is that you're the author, you're the creator, you're the mastermind behind the brand or the strategy. And so it's very much you, and hopefully you're invested in this product or entity or creation. Hopefully you're invested, because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to create it. But you have to let go of it. And it's a constant battle to know when to take ownership, when to defend, when to stand up for it, when to go to the mat for it, when to kill for it, and when to say, okay, it's yours now. Take it and do it what you will. It's very painful to me when a client takes a campaign that we've created or a brand that we've built, and they hand it off to maybe a partner agency, and they start to execute against it in ways that I don't like and is off brand to me. It's very, very painful to watch that happen, because you see your work being diluted. But at the end of the day, you gave it away. So it's someone else's baby now. And by someone else, I mean, it could be the public, it could be another partner, it could be a new CEO, a new CMO, it could be another agency, it could be a lot of people. So you constantly have to, there's that tension between detaching and owning, and gifting and keeping and retaining, so to speak. There's a mantra that I live by in my life, is that you can't create and critique at the same time. You have to turn off your critical voice when you're creating. Otherwise, you'd never get anywhere. You'd write a sentence, and then before you know it, you're diagramming it and looking up different words, and you'll never finish the sentence. So you have to just get the creation out of you, and then later go back with a whole different view and critique it and refine it, and then maybe go back into the creative mode. But I truly believe that those two forces can't live together at the same time. So that's the way I think about my comfort zone, in a way. I think I have my creator's comfort zone and my critiquer's comfort zone, and hopefully the two don't collide.
That's really interesting. I was going to go back to comfort zones there. And by the way, I live by the same mantra of you can't, it's very difficult to create and critique at the same time. I feel similarly with my work. How about the critique side of things? So, when you're being critiqued, or I guess when you critique yourself, but you were talking before about being critiqued, what is outside your comfort zone about that detachment is sort of a solution for?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, so when you're creating, you're very raw. It's deeply personal. You're vested in it. You're really emotional. Not that you're not rational, but when you're critiquing, it's much more rational. You have to be much more judgmental. You have to be much more, critical. You have to find what's wrong with it. That's what to critique means. Find what's wrong with it. When you're creating, you want to be optimistic. You want to believe in the idea. You nurture. You're not trying to kill it or prune it or hurt it. You're trying to nurture it and give it life and give it breath. And you're really driven by inspiration, which is not to say that when you're critiquing, you're not inspired either. It's just different. So I think that it's being comfortable with those two sides and understanding that they both have a role in the process. And so when I'm critiquing or being critiqued, I try to not have a foot in the creator's space. I try to let that space, give that space, put it over there, and let the creator rest for a moment while I accept the criticism. And, in my business, and I think most businesses, criticism's important. It helps develop an idea. It helps evolve a process. You get better through criticism. So I don't think of criticism as a dirty word or a negative experience, unless I'm creating, in which case I don't like it. So it's very important for me to separate those two things, because I love cooking, and I cook a lot. And the reason I love cooking is it never gets criticized. It's a creative expression. that people always love and always enjoy, and nobody says, "Oh, too much salt," or if they do, they're not invited back. Um, uh, but I love being fully immersed in the creative process of cooking without the fear of being critiqued. Um, Whereas when I create, I know that it will be critiqued, and I just try to accept that. Likewise, when I'm being critiqued, I know I'm going to have to go off and create again. So I have to learn to compartmentalize while internalizing the feedback that I'm getting in the critique phase, so to speak.
Are you, at your core, are you, is your personality and more of a critiquer or a creator or a combo? Like where are you personally reaching?
Uh, oh my God, that's really funny. That really depends on who you ask, Andy. My ex-boyfriend would tell you I'm the most critical person he's ever met, I'm sure. But my friends, the people I work with, I think would consider me very much a creative person and very, very. I've been called idea euphoric in my professional life, and that's a word I love. I really respond to that, and I have. I can't help myself. I mean, sometimes my colleagues will kick me under the table in meetings because I'm giving away ideas for free because I'm just coming up with them. So I think I'm spontaneously creative and can't help myself. So I really prefer to be in that. I mean, who wants to be? But I will tell you, I take creative direction, which is essentially a paid critic, very, very. It's a very important role to me. And I'm the first to tell you, if somebody sends me a website and says, "What do you think?" I always say to them, "Don't ask me what I think, unless you really want to hear it, because I can be critical in service of an idea, and I think it's important, but I much prefer to be a creator."
So this is really interesting, and I just want to wrap it up by asking you. I want to go back to the beginning. You talked at the very beginning about being a young professional in New York City, right? Coming from Texas and stepping into these meetings and having your ideas shredded apart. I love that metaphor. It's like as if it's like literally like putting it through the shredder, and when you put something through the shredder, you can know the whole point of a shredder, right, is so that you can no longer actually fathom what it originally was, right? There's like a real destruction element to that image. What's that?
Pick up the pieces, literally.
Right. So, but now you're running your own agency and writing a book and so on. What advice would you give for people listening to this who are younger in their careers, feeling shredded, wanting to become whole, wanting to become, some more seasoned professionals? What advice specifically around acting outside comfort zones might you offer? I know it's putting you on the spot, but you're a good person to offer this advice, so I'm curious what you think.
When I came to New York, it was 1989. I had very big hair and a thick Texas accent, and I came from a school where I was considered, generally smart, and then I come to New York and I'm just this dumb hick from Texas, and what she taught, could listen to her talk, say that again. I got that a lot. Say that again. That's so cute, So I was way out of my comfort zone and very self-conscious about just who I was as a person, which is not something I ever thought about, because in Texas there is no accent. There's just talking. So I had to make a big adjustment to myself and really think about how I presented myself. But I will say that to young people, and I've had lots of young people come and intern with us and work with us, and I think learning to take criticism is particularly challenging for this young generation, the youngest ones that I've worked with, because I don't think, it's the everybody gets a trophy generation, I like to say, and I don't think they learn to see, they've been taught to see the value of criticism. And I talked about having ideas shredded. I literally had a creative director take a piece of paper that I had written copy on and light it with a cigarette lighter. And those people smoked, you know. So he took out a cigarette lighter and lit it and just stared at me like this and said, "This is what I think of your work." And it was all I could do not to burst into tears. But I learned so much from that man. And I was so grateful to him for being hard on me, because it toughened me up in a way that has served me well 15, 20, 25 years later in my career. And discipline is a hard lesson. And I think that is what the advice I would offer young people is: no pain, no gain. Take the pain. And value it, and appreciate that someone is going out of their comfort zone by maybe telling you something they don't feel comfortable telling you, or being harsh with you because they're just emotional. Or you know, when that creative director took his cigarette lighter out and lit my paper on fire, he was giving me a very profound lesson. I didn't want to have that feeling again. And I went back to my desk and I slaved away many, many hours before I got up the nerve to bring him back something else. So it just, I'm not saying appreciate the pain, because you won't for a long time, but to a young person, I would say embrace it, embrace the discomfort, see it as a challenge, see it as something that you need to meet head on and confront and grow from, and appreciate the people. Don't resent it. Don't resent it. Appreciate the people for what they're trying to do. And maybe it sounds a little Pollyannish or optimistic, but appreciate that someone cares enough about you and your career and your professional development to tell you the hard stuff that maybe you don't want to hear, that they're willing to hurt your feelings in the interest of seeing you grow.
Very wise. And now I imagine that it would have been hard for you to say that back then, what you just said. Yeah.
When I was in the bathroom crying, yeah. No.
All right. Well, thank you, Kristi, so much. This is really great. I anticipate a lot of people will find this video quite interesting, because it really brings up a lot of things that people do struggle with, and you have some very smart answers to it. So thank you so much.
Learn from my tears. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Bye, Andy.